So just a little bit of background first about, I guess, the connection. So Dr. Mahfoud was actually my professor for transformative learning back when I was doing my master's degree. So um, so I am American, but I live in Uzbekistan. So
I was trying to
I'm not
remember
sure.
where you were this morning.
That's okay. Right
I'm
now, I'm actually visiting family. So right now, I'm East Coast. But ordinarily, I live in Uzbekistan. So I moved there, I think about 5 years ago now. I went with the Fulbright program, and then I don't know, I just really fell in love with the country, and I decided to stay there. So Webster University has another branch location in Uzbekistan, so in the capital city there. And my understanding is that we had a professor who dropped out like 3 weeks before the class, and so Dr. Mahfoud very kindly agreed to kind of step into that role. And so that's how I met him. So he was my instructor there, and then we've just, kind of stayed connected since then. And I'm currently doing my EDD at Webster in St. Louis, but everything's online nowadays.
right.
And the topic that I was really interested in was, how can we blend transformative learning, which is like this, very prominent theory in, the educational space right now, with kind of personalist principles. So specifically, like, how do we design an education system, or maybe how do we design practices for educational leaders that are really grounded in a personalist conception of dignity and the common good. And so I reached out to Dr. Mahfoud because I think he's probably the only person that I am aware of who has any conception of either transformative learning or personalism. Sorry, who has any conception of like these two, very distinct theories, and he might have any conception of how they might fit together. So that is sort of our connection. So he then reached out to you and said, "Oh, she would be an awesome person to talk to." I'm very excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that Steve himself was not able to join us, but
Oh, that's
that
okay.
just would just be kind of difficult for both
Yeah,
his wife. But you're in good hands.
yeah, I'm very excited. So thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me.
Well, I met
Um,
Steve in short. So Steve is the primary author of the book that we're sort of talking about, Philosophy
mhm,
Begins in Wonder.
mhm,
Um, and I just want to give you a little quick background too. I was
yeah.
Steve's student at the University of Rhode Island in 1980. So
Wow.
that's when I met him, and then I
Mhm.
later, did some teaching assistant stuff with him and grading,
Yeah.
and then eventually co-teaching with him, and then working on books together. So we did two books
Wow.
together, and
Mhm.
he's 92 now, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned, yeah.
I continued. In fact, I'll see him tomorrow, him and his lovely wife,
Yeah.
Sherry. So I usually see them once a week, and we spend a couple of
Yeah.
hours together. And he's still sharp as a tack when it comes to
Oh.
philosophy and theology. And so
Yeah.
it's really wonderful. So we've had this, what, almost 50-year friendship.
Yeah. And how beautiful that you get to kind of experience that growth and development of the relationship over all of this time, right? From kind of a student-teacher relationship all the way to, more friends.
Yeah.
So that's
And so
that's very beautiful.
And Stephen Schwartz is the son of Baldwin Schwartz and the godson of Dietrich von Hildebrand. And
Yeah, I remember hearing about that connection there.
yeah, and he was also, I always say he's a fourth level relic because when he was a baby, he was held by Saint Edith Stein.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, so Edith Stein
Oh
would
my
come
gosh.
visit family and to talk with Dietrich and and Baldwin and Laney Schwartz about philosophy. And but before they talked philosophy, she would always say, "I have to go in and hold the baby and give the
Oh,
baby." So he was held by her as
oh
a
my
he
goodness.
was given a teddy bear also, but the teddy bear sadly has been lost.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure after 90 years, it kind of finds its way other places, but
Yeah.
that is amazing. So Edith Stein,
Always
I
I'm only
love
one
her.
person removed from St. Edith Stein.
Yeah.
Now
Oh my gosh. Now I'm two people removed.
you're two people
That's
removed,
so
so it's
cool.
amazing. Yeah.
That's
That
amazing.
was
Same,
really,
you go
yeah.
ahead.
It was an amazing thing to, I came to the University of Rhode Island as a, basically as an Anglican, Protestant
Yeah.
Anglican, pro-choice, non-Catholic.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And so Steve and a number of colleagues at the University of Rhode Island, sort of led me into Catholicism, which was beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
I have to just tell another very quick story because the
Oh, I
background
love it. Yeah.
fascinating. The reason Stephen Schwartz was at the University of Rhode Island was because I believe it, I have the dates wrong, but I think it was back in the 1960s, but I'm not positive. I got there in 70, no, I got there in 85, so maybe it was in the 70s, but anyway, the dates, I'm terrible with dates. This is where Steve would have the dates for you. But the University of Rhode Island hired a gentleman by the name of Oliver Martin. And
Hmm.
the reason they hired Oliver Martin was because he was a communist, he was a materialist, he was an atheist, he
Hmm.
was a relativist, and so they thought he'd be perfect person to run the philosophy department at a secular
Hmm.
university. And what they didn't count on was that once apparently Oliver Martin was also a very intelligent man, really seeking truth. And
Hmm.
shortly, I guess, after he got tenure, he converted to Catholicism.
Oh, I love it. God's providence is just amazing.
And then he proceeded to hire one Catholic and or Protestant Christian after another. Um,
That's amazing.
and so then he retired and I believe passed away before I got there in 1980. But so when I walked into the secular university of the University of Rhode Island in 1980, the philosophy department was solidly Christian, primarily
Hmm.
Catholic.
Hmm.
Sure is not the case any longer now, but
Yeah.
right place at the right time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. God's providence. And I
So it,
think there's a lot of people who kind of share that story of, maybe they went to college expecting the kind of, standard story of you go to college, you get exposed to things, you become more secular, you kind of lose religion. But I know, I myself was one of those people who really deepened faith, and a lot of other people that I met also had a similar experience. I think fundamentally it's that, that mentality of students who go to university, hopefully, are seeking knowledge and seeking truth. Yeah. And it's just kind of a natural extension. Hopefully, yeah, you never know, right? But hopefully they are seeking knowledge and truth. But,
Yeah.
oh,
So by
that's
the time I
wonderful.
met Steve, he had been teaching for, I guess, probably close to 20 years, 25 years. And then
Hmm.
I was his student for a number of years.
Hmm.
And then overall, I think he taught for 44 or 45 years.
Wow. It's a
Yeah.
good long career. That's
Yeah.
nice. A lot of students impacted.
So the book came out of his teaching, really. I mean, he was teaching,
Hmm.
ethics, virtue ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, what else? Oh, goodness. And then, of course, he had his own interest, philosophy of the person, which, of course, we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
He was teaching all of these things. And when I met him and became friends with him as a student in 1980, I remember way back then him saying, I want to write a book called Philosophy Begins in Wonder. And I was like,
Oh,
it's nice, and then, 20 years later, we had written the abortion book together, and he was still saying,
yeah.
I always wanted to write a book, Philosophy Begins in Wonder. And I said, well, you're
Mhm.
semi-retired at this point. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, might as well.
So
Yeah.
we thought we'd meet for about a year or so and put the book together. And, 5 years
Mhm.
later, we were still working on the book. But thanks be to God, we got it all put together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
That's wonderful. And I mean, just I want to take a second. That's a great segue into just the wonder of it all. So I find it so interesting that first off, he just knew the title of the book, right?
he knew
Before
the title back
kind
in
of fleshing everything
1980.
else. Yeah. But I think that's such a beautiful starting point as well. I think that oftentimes philosophy feels It feels heavy and dense, and it feels almost like intimidating to step into, right? Especially for those who maybe aren't as well versed in it. But that title, Philosophy Begins in Wonder, it makes it feel accessible, inviting, and a little bit fun almost.
Well, I
Um,
mean, the way the book is written is really how Steve taught,
yeah.
it was always wonderful and delightful and accessible. Um, this is from a man who, when he was 4 years old, I mean, he was brought up in a very Catholic household.
Yeah.
When he was 4 years old, and he knows because they moved a lot at that time period, fleeing from
Yeah.
Nazi Germany. And by the way, his life story is available on YouTube. If you look up
Oh, okay.
his whole life story is there from a seminar he
Mm.
gave, which is quite a story. But when
Yeah.
he was 4 years old, it dawned on him at 4 years old. I mean, nothing dawned on me when I was four, but when Steve was
Oh, yeah.
four, it dawned on him one day, I can't just be Catholic because my parents are Catholic. I can only
Yeah.
be Catholic if it's the truth. And so
Yeah.
I need to find out if it's true. And he's really lived his whole life in a really, really honest, deep down honest search for truth.
Mm.
Um, with a deep, deep respect and dignity for the human person. So,
Yeah.
the wonder, and he's a very joyful person as well, a
Yeah.
very happy person, brought up in a very happy home. And surrounded by the music, that Dietrich von Hildebrand and his mother and father
Yeah.
brought of Bach and Beethoven and Mozart. And,
Hmm.
and it's interesting with all of his theology and philosophy, um, Steve still maintains that his primary way to God is music. His primary
Wow.
understanding of God comes through the music, primarily of Johann Sebastian Bach.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I Yeah, and that also that kind of sheds some light on the composition of the book, because there's an entire section, part two, where it talks about music and memory and perception and how all of these things are kind of interplayed. And I found that very beautiful and very fascinating, because I don't think that in a typical philosophy book you'll take time to discuss music, right?
Music.
But music is such a fundamentally human thing, right? Like we as people appreciate the beauty of music in a very unique way, and it has so many unique abilities to connect to memories, to connect to ideas, and just to elicit so many wonderful things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was that's thank you for sharing that, because that kind of shed some light on the book a little bit more.
Yeah, so the book really came out of almost everything that he was teaching. We
Yeah.
made in the ethics course, we did spend 6 weeks, the final 6 weeks of the ethics and virtue ethics course on the topic of abortion. But we
Wow.
had, for two things. One, we had already written a book called Understanding Abortion from Mixed Feelings to Rational Thought. But the
Yeah.
other reason that we didn't include it in this book was really thanks to Sherry Schwartz, his wife, who said it
Mm.
doesn't belong in a book about wonder.
Yeah, I
There's
would.
nothing
Yeah.
wonderful about abortion. There's
I.
not a topic of
Yeah.
wonder. It's really ultimately a topic of horror. And she was the
Yeah.
one that said, take it out of this book, because it
Mm.
was originally at least a chapter or two.
Yeah.
And we were both really grateful to her that, because that was really an insight that we needed. And so that was taken out of the book,
Mhm.
um, and rightfully so. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree with that. I think that so much of this book, it's about, being amazed by the marvel that is life, by the marvel that is creation. And you're right, abortion is it is the absence of life. It is
yeah.
the absence of creation. It is the destruction of these things. And so in that sense, it's not wonder, it's mourning. But I do think that, when I'm reading through, at the very least, that first section on personhood,
Yeah.
um, there are a lot of, kind of whispers of, not abortion per se, but whispers of, I guess, arguments against abortion, right? So whispers of, well, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to have life? What does it mean to, or maybe let me rephrase, because we have this unique life, this unique personness, it merits respect, it merits that sense of protection almost,
I think
or
it
at the
revolves.
very least merits wonder, right?
Yeah, I wonder. I think it revolves around that initial quote that's in the book at the very beginning,
Yeah,
that Dietrich von Hildebrand just sort of said in a classroom lecture one day. He pointed to a chair in the room and he said, compared to
yeah,
a human person, this chair doesn't even exist. And
yeah,
if you can grasp that,
yeah,
compared to a human person, this coffee cup doesn't even exist.
yeah,
There's such a deep, deep mystery of the reality of the human person.
yeah,
Consciousness is
yeah,
such a incredible, both human and divine consciousness. Such
yeah,
is every That's the greatest mystery that we grasp.
yeah,
That we woke up
yeah,
this morning and know yourself, that as yourself.
hmm,
We take it
yeah,
so for granted. Of course, I woke up and, I'm here.
yeah,
Like, what's the big
yeah,
deal? And it's like, it's the biggest deal in the ever that you woke up this morning and that you exist. Because
hmm.
maybe you might not have.
Yeah, and it's so easy for us to get bogged down with the day-to-day tasks, and we forget to stop and appreciate, on the macro scale. Like, it is amazing that we exist. It is amazing that we are here. And I think that the book does a really great job of that. And in particular, I want to highlight there are several sections peppered throughout that just says, wonder. Isn't it amazing that, I can say I and you can say you. Isn't it amazing that we can connect and communicate each other through language or through facial expressions? And I just thought it was really beautiful that, I mean, first off, it's not like a dense philosophical tome, right? It's very accessible, the entire book, but still so amazing that we take those moments, kind of like in the Psalms, the little Selah, like the little break to say, like, isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this amazing? Um,
I mean, that
I
sense of
think it's really beautiful.
why is there something and not nothing? Why is there any,
Yeah.
is really a fascinating question.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah. My dad is also very interested in philosophy. And so, growing up, that particular question, why is there something rather than nothing, was kind of a refrain in the house, right? Like he would love discussing these things.
Well, we used
Um,
to say, like, I think we have it in the book, like you picture yourself in a spaceship and you're just
mhm.
traveling through space like Star Trek, but there's no stars, there's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's space and space is something, but if you set that aside for the analogy and you're just going through space and you picture yourself going for 100 years, 200
Yeah.
years, you're just going and there's nothing. There's nothing. It just time goes by and there's just space
Yeah.
even. And then you
Yeah.
see a rock. After a
Mhm.
1,000 years of traveling, you see a rock. Like you would be like, whoa,
It's the most amazing thing in that you've ever experienced.
now there's something. And
Yeah,
and and then the question is, should arise, like, why? Why now? Why is there a rock?
yeah,
Why is there something? The
yeah,
the fascination of that. But it's not that here we have something. We don't just have a rock. I mean, we have everything.
yeah,
We have
yeah.
everything from, the flowers, the animals, the people. But
Hmm.
then we have stuff like love and music. And
Yeah,
and it's like it should be mind-boggling. If you at least give yourself
yeah,
a chance to stop and think about it, you should at least have a
yeah,
moment in your life of wow.
yeah, yeah. Because, if you think about it, when it comes to things like love, music, art, like humor, even, you bring up humor, the ability to appreciate humor. We don't need those things. Like if you kind of going back to sort of like an evolutionary biology level, right? Like we don't need music. We don't need art. We don't need humor, but it adds so much richness and depth to our human experience. And I think that's also why you single those out and the capacities of the person, right? It is a unique capacity of the person to be able to appreciate beauty and art and music and humor, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's just, you know, obviously, if we think about it more from a religious perspective, what a beautiful thing that God has given us these
Mm,
gifts that are not necessary to our basic existence, but are conducive to our flourishing.
mm,
It's just, it's such a beautiful thing that we get to live a life and experience all of this.
mm. I used to,
Yeah.
wonder a lot about if my dog was a person, because I certainly
Yeah.
love my dog, and on some level, he certainly loved me. But I remember being on a beach with him early one morning or evening. It was probably
Yeah.
evening because I didn't even get up that early. But sitting on the
Yeah.
beach in Cape Cod and watching a sunset, and
Mhm.
being aware of the fact that Max did not appreciate the sunset. He had no appreciation.
Yeah.
And even though you could say, well, he didn't, have color vision necessarily,
Mhm.
even in black and white, as Ansel Adams knew, the sunset was
Yeah.
beautiful. And yet Max had no
Yeah.
appreciation of the sunset.
Mhm.
And that lack of a sense of beauty, I realized, is such an important aspect of the human person, um,
Yeah.
and that we can appreciate beauty, and
Mhm.
not in the sense of beauty's in the eye of the beholder, because I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah.
Beauty is this objective reality, and if we fail
Yeah.
to appreciate it, the problem is not in the objective reality, it's in us.
Yeah.
We
It's
got
in
the
us.
problem.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the appreciation of beauty, and
Yeah.
beauty as a pointer to something greater than the
Yeah.
beauty itself.
Kind of like a peek behind the curtain into the divine, right?
Yeah. Because,
Yeah.
when you create
Beautiful.
something, I mean, I've written books, when you create things, you really have a sense that it's something coming through you, not
Yeah.
from you. You can
Mhm.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. So, at Webster, I'm currently teaching in the master's program, and one of the classes that I'm teaching is about creativity and innovation. So we're kind of going through, you know, historically, how have people viewed creativity? Because, of course, human creativity has existed as long as humans have existed, right? But when we think of it more in terms of like a field of study, it's comparatively more recent. And um, one of the main themes that you see throughout history when you're talking to creative people and you're asking them to describe their creativity, they describe themselves almost as if they are just a vessel through which this art passes through. It's like the art, the creation, the music, to it demands to exist in this, you know, physical realm. It demands to be created in a certain sense. And so many of the artists will say, I really was just a vessel passing through it. And,
I
you know, it's
listen
interesting.
to the,
Oh, go
the
ahead.
music of Johann
Yeah.
Sebastian Bach, or you
Yeah.
stand in St. Peter's Cathedral, or you're
Hmm.
in Florence and you look at the statue of David and you go, no, a
Yeah.
22-year-old kid did not create this. It came
Oh
through
my
a
gosh. Yeah.
22-year-old kid, the statue of David, but
Yeah.
he did not know. It's like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think anyone who has been a 22-year-old kid looks at that and is, you know, instantly jealous and instantly thinking, okay, well, I am not living up to the potential. If this is the standard of what 22-year-olds should do,
Right.
you know, me sitting in my basement, you know, playing video games doesn't quite hit it. But yeah,
I
and
mean,
you know,
there's
thinking back to,
when he did the Pietà, I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
to see the divine. You can see
yeah,
it.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of gives me a little bit of permission to not be so hard on myself when I see, you know, all of those other things and realize like, ah, it's okay. It was the divine coming through them in a certain sense.
And then,
It,
I mean, you take the creation of a new human being, the creation of a child, you have an egg that's going to die in
yeah,
3 days. You got an egg
hmm,
that's going to die actually in 24 hours. It lasts
yeah,
24 hours. You have a sperm that can last 3 to 7 days
Yeah,
tops if he's lucky.
maximum. Yeah.
I had one that lasted
Yeah.
7 days. It's my son Dan.
Yeah.
And then
Uh-huh.
so these two things that are about to die come
Yeah.
together. And now you have a being that can live 100 years. And
Mm,
not just any being, but a being with consciousness and the ability to love
yeah.
and the ability to appreciate music.
Yeah.
And you look at that creation and it's like, nah, that came through me, but I didn't
Yeah,
do
yeah. It's like I did not make that. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like a parent cannot claim to make the consciousness, to make the soul, to make the personality
but
of their
even to make
child,
the
right? Like it,
body. I mean, you've got
yeah, it's just,
two things that are about to die
yeah,
that come
yeah,
together and begins. It's like, no,
yeah,
you can look at what happens, but you can't make
yeah,
it. You can't, there's
yeah.
something else going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it reminds me a little bit of Stravinsky describing, the rite of spring and how this came to him. And he mentioned that he had just this vision of this, young girl just dancing in the woods and dancing so much that she was, basically sacrificed to this god of spring. That, her life, her dancing, her vitality was given, sort of as a sacrifice to bring forth spring, right? I mean, if you just hear him describe it, it sounds horrific, honestly. Like it sounds like, a horrific pagan sacrifice, and yet to think that, like, oh well, this was just, this vision passed through him and then created this beautiful opera. Yeah, it's interesting to consider creativity, as sort of one of the capacities for humanity. Maybe we add an 11th capacity of human personhood is creativity. Well, actually, I'd love on that note to maybe transition a little bit. You list 10 essential capacities of personhood in the book, and I'd love to discuss those with you if you have a moment. So first, you say a human person is capable of saying I. So that would be like that first person subjectivity. I'm just going to read them out first, and then we can kind of discuss them
All
after.
right.
Um, then a human person is capable of being addressed as you. So that interpersonal relationality.
I-
Third, we have the human person is capable of understanding. And you use the phrase getting it, right? Which is a very like intuitive phrase. Fourth, we have they are a being who has freedom, who has the ability to choose to do, later on you kind of you draw that out further as choosing to do the good or the bad, because number five mentions a person who can be morally good or evil. And we could maybe even describe that as like the capacity for moral judgment. Um, Six, a person who is capable of using language. I think that also goes to that wonder of our ability to communicate in an interpersonal sense. Seven, which is my favorite, only a person can laugh and appreciate humor. I think that's really interesting. Eight, only a person can make and receive a promise, which again, I think really important, that sort of covenantal capacity. Nine, only a person can appreciate beauty, which we've discussed about. And then 10, only persons have a history. So
That's a
first, I would love,
fascinating one.
yeah. Um, First, I would like to hear, between, you and your co-author, how did this list come about? You mentioned that it was primarily, this book was largely his notes and his sort of teaching style. But I'm curious, like this list of 10 capacities, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, yes, I agree, I agree, I agree. But there are some in there that people will agree with, but not have considered. And so I'm curious how you came about that list of those 10 capacities. And then was there maybe something that was debated? Should we put it on or should we not?
I think this, I mean, like I said, Steve taught for 44 years.
Yeah,
He had many wonderful colleagues who were, teaching and sharing ideas with him. So I think it came out of contemplation. It came
yeah,
out of study. It certainly came out of his, I mean, he knew philosophy and philosophers like
Mm,
the back of his hand.
mm,
It certainly
yeah,
came out of, one of his favorite philosophers, Blaise Pascal.
yeah,
There's something in Pascal where he says, even if the whole universe, the universe could kill me with like a drop of poison or a drop of
yeah.
vapor could kill me. But even if the universe were to kill me, and it's so much greater than me, the universe doesn't know it. And
Mm,
I, by my thought, encompass the whole
yeah.
universe. So, if
Wow.
there's a tornado and, I get about to be sucked up into it, the
Yeah,
tornado certainly on some level is greater than I am and it can kill me.
yeah,
He doesn't know it. And
yeah.
I know it. And so
Mm,
this inner eye is
mhm.
so important. And I
Yeah,
think some of it also is just some of it certainly is Steve's life as a philosopher, but some of it is just
yeah.
the contemplation of what we would call inner experience. For
Hmm.
instance, in the free will and determinism section, there's so many arguments in favor of determinism.
Yeah,
And free will often comes down to like an inner experience of I know I could have done differently. In that circumstance, I was a real jerk and I could have done differently and I regret that I
yeah,
didn't do differently. And the
yeah.
inner, for instance, experience of I regret something.
Yeah,
Um, why would you regret something if you couldn't have done otherwise? So that
yeah.
inner experience of the I, and that I can address
Mhm,
you as you, and that we're somehow distinct. Yeah, we may have many things in common, but the
mhm.
ability to communicate with another person, um, and all of these it's important to mention that all of these in this list, you have to be a person in the first place to have these things. These things aren't
Yeah,
what make you a person.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's a good point.
So in
And
other
I
words,
think
if
that
you're a
you do,
stone, you're never gonna, no matter how long you hang around as a stone, you're not gonna have these capacities. So you have to have
yeah,
the inner ontological nature of a person to begin with.
yeah.
And then these capacities can be there to one extent or another.
Okay.
But they don't
Yeah,
make
yeah,
you a
and
person. It's very interesting. You
yeah,
are a person, and then because you have the being of a person, then you can function as a person. But if you don't have the being first, you'll never have these capacities.
yeah.
You have the
Yeah,
being
I
of
think
a
that's a very
dog or the
interesting way
being
to
of a coffee cup, but
squirrel or
you
yeah.
wait a million years and you're in these capacities. So
Mhm.
that was one of the important things, is to distinguish between your being as a person and your functioning as a person. Because, for instance, somebody like Marianne Warren will take this list and say, well,
Mhm.
if you don't have these things, you don't have you're not a person. And what she
Yeah,
really means is, what you want to say is, well, you're not functioning as a person, but
yeah.
you can never function as a person unless you have the being first.
Mhm.
So functioning presupposes being.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got the sense reading through that you guys were very, very sensitive and very aware of that sort of counter argument, that idea that people would take this rather than a descriptive list of the capacities of a person to sort of be proscriptive. If I create a computer that does this, therefore it is a person. If I have a dog that's able to do this, therefore it is a person, right? So I see that you guys you do kind of game those out a little bit in each section, and again describing how no, that is not the case. That if a computer can tell a joke, it is a person.
The computer doesn't get the joke.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, the
nobody there.
computer
There's
strings
nobody
words
home.
together. Yeah. Mhm.
We sometimes
Yeah,
start to think, Alexis is a person,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. There's nobody home. There's
No.
nobody there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I certainly personify my car, right? Like I give my car a little name because I'm one of those people, but I am under no illusions that my car is actually a person
right,
that, is able to listen to me. Um,
right, right.
yeah,
The
wonderful.
idea that
So,
only we have
yeah,
history is one of the most
yeah,
fascinating ones to me. If you take,
mhm,
deer in the woods, let's say, deer
yeah,
don't have a history. If they have any history, it's connected to ours.
Yeah.
Beavers have been doing what beavers do since beavers were created. Beavers
Yeah.
don't change. Animals don't change. They just go along doing the same thing over and over again. But we do change,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
history.
And the fact that we can study and learn and grow as a collective from the history, right? So,
We hope.
we have that, yeah, we hope, right? Like we have the saying, history repeats itself, right? And so, because we as a society, as a collective body of individuals are aware of this phenomenon, we have deemed it, necessary and worthwhile to instruct children on history from the time that they are very young to ensure that like every individual member of the society has a collective understanding of our history, of the good parts and the bad parts of it, so that we can make informed decisions going forward based off of the results of ideas that have been tried in the past. Yeah, that idea of a history, um, it's very interesting, and I would say that it marks not just, personhood, but it marks sort of civilization in a certain sense as well. Um,
Strangely, though, sometimes we get confused and we think that that means our human nature has changed. And our human
yeah,
nature,
yeah,
it doesn't seem that it changes. It's interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's the word.
yeah, one of my favorite sort of historical misconceptions is that people in the past were all dumb. And
Right.
like the reason why they had bad technology, and it's just because they were dumb and not as smart as we are. But we are smart. And so if we had, been in this situation, we would have acted differently. No, I mean, people in the past were, just as smart as we were. They just had, different technological capacities. But
We're
yeah,
always
it's very
amazed when
interesting.
we read some quote from somebody and, it's like
Yeah,
300 BC or
yeah.
2000 BC. And you're like, what? People could think back then?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
So, were there any things that you guys had considered adding to this list that you maybe decided against?
I mean, there's a lot of things like the capacity, a lot of things are included in this, like the capacity
Yeah,
to love,
yeah.
the capacity, but these were things that I think were sort of different. I think Steve was looking for things that people don't always immediately consider. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that you guys definitely did that.
Think,
I mentioned,
giving and receiving promises,
yeah,
and appreciating beauty, those things sort of include the concepts of love.
yeah,
But I think people think of love immediately, and I think he wanted to zero in on things that people don't immediately consider when they think
yeah.
of persons.
And I think that you guys did a great job of that, especially, number eight, only a person can give and receive a promise. That really struck me. Again, one of those things that I would not have thought of, but when it's presented to me, I intuitively understand and agree with it, right? And you guys give the example of a dog, right? Like, can I try and like let's say I do give a promise to my dog. Maybe I promise my dog that once I come home I will go on a walk. That promise means nothing to the dog, right? Like the dog, of course the dog would love to go on walks, but the fact that I promised and then I'm breaking that promise, it doesn't register with the
Right.
dog.
This is really
Um
to yourself. You're
yeah,
really promising yourself that you'll take care of the
yeah,
dog when you get home.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and likewise, let's say that I train my dog and I, make my dog promise that he's not going to, rip up the chair or something like that, right? Um, if the dog then does rip up the chair, I can be angry, upset, whatever, but I don't feel betrayed, right?
Right.
Like when a person breaks a promise, I feel a sense of betrayal, like that trust, that, social bond that we have had that was built up over, however much time, that social bond has been broken, that trust has been broken. And therefore, I feel betrayed because a promise was made and not kept. right? Whereas if my dog, rips up the chair after I've trained him not to, I don't feel a sense of betrayal, right?
Mhm.
And I think that again goes back to that capacity of promise, right? Um,
It goes
when
back
I
to
think of promise, I
also
think
it's
trust.
it's grounded in the nature of the
Yeah,
human person and in rights and
yeah,
duties as well.
yeah,
When you have a human person, there's inherent rights, and then because there's rights,
yeah,
there's duties from
yeah,
someone else to those rights.
mm,
And that's very unique to the human person, that our very
yeah,
nature demands rights and duties. You know,
hmm,
I mean, Thomas Aquinas, even said that
yeah,
once God has created us, sort of you tend to think that overall it's like, well, God doesn't owe you anything. But even Thomas Aquinas said, oh, that's not
yeah,
quite the case. If you create a
yeah,
human person, you've got rights
yeah,
and duties. So once
hmm,
God decided to create human persons,
hmm,
as with the nature of human persons created in his image and likeness, he created rights and duties for himself. He couldn't just like create us
yeah,
and then just throw us to the wind. He was kind of stuck with
yeah,
us with rights and duties.
yeah,
And
hmm,
that's a fascinating idea. Um,
yeah,
but all of these things, like the keeping and receiving of a promise, is
hmm,
if I promise you something, I'm
yeah,
promising it to you in the very nature of persons.
yeah,
So you have a right to expect that I will uphold that promise, and I have a duty
yeah,
to uphold it unless there's some horrible circumstances that
yeah,
would negate that promise.
hmm,
And so that's important. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it reminds me of, kind of what we would now consider the old-fashioned practice of I give you my word, right? Like when I'm making a promise, I give you my word that this will be done, right? Because again, it's like I, as a person, understand that I have rights and obligations in this world. I understand that I have dignity and honor, and you have dignity and honor, and I am pledging upon my dignity and honor as a person that
Mhm.
I will do this for you. Right?
It also shows you the power of words and language because you actually
Yeah,
create things that didn't exist beforehand. So when I
yeah,
say to you, I promise that I will help you with your homework tomorrow,
yeah,
I've created something. I've
yeah,
created by these words and
yeah,
intentions, and I've created a promise that didn't exist before
yeah,
I spoke. It's a very
yeah,
fascinating thing that you create
yeah.
these with words.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And I mean, obviously, you're not creating like a physical bond, but it still matters. Like you have created something that is important, that does bond you to this
Right.
other person in that way, right?
Right.
And if a promise is broken, I would argue that, if we compare the breaking of a promise to the breaking of a glass, yes, breaking of a glass is breaking of a physical object that you can see and observe, but breaking of a promise, it is much deeper and more impactful, right? Kind of going back to that idea of how personhood is not just about these observable traits. Like if you're just trying to define a person based off of what you can see, it's a moot point. You're not going to ever find it.
It kind
But
of like
yeah,
that, compared to a broken promise, this broken glass doesn't even
yeah,
exist.
it's nothing, right? Like the Dietrich, yeah,
Right.
the
Yeah.
same quote. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would also like to shift us a little bit to chapters 3 and 4, where we're talking about the kind of relationality between the person and the body. Um, So the person and the body, I found this very interesting. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind, because I'm thinking about this more from an educational frame of mind, is like there are so many, especially teenagers that are feeling very insecure about the relationship between their person and their body, right? Like, is my body me? What does this reflect about me? Am I totally separate from my body? Things like this. So first, I would, appreciate maybe if you could just, for the sake of the recording, just elaborate a little bit about, through the view of you and Dr. Schwartz, what is the relationship between a person and their body?
Well, first, I mean, we looked at the idea of I'm not my body. I mean, if I lose my
Yeah.
arm, it's a sad thing, but
uh,
um, I'm not less of a person because
yeah.
I'm amputated. It's
Yeah.
sad and I can't get around as easily.
Yeah.
But my hair, I don't lose
Yeah.
myself as a person.
Yeah.
Um, where in my body am I? Well, I seem to
Yeah.
be sort of more here than in my toe
Yeah.
until I stub
Yeah.
my toe. And then all
And
of
then I'm very aware. Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
where in your body are you? Um,
Yeah.
you know, if my body diminishes, my soul, my inner me, the I doesn't get diminished.
Yeah.
Um, so there seems to be a huge amount of separation with the
Hmm.
body. I can have a heart transplant. I can have my
Yeah.
heart taken out and an artificial heart put
Yeah.
in, and I'm still me.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways in which I am not my body.
Hmm.
And obviously, if we lose function in some part of our
Yeah.
body, we still function as persons.
Yeah.
And so that chapter really talks about that. But then on the other hand, if you come up and you start, touching
Yeah.
hair that's not me, and I would
Yeah.
I would immediately say, stop touching me. Like not
Yeah, of course.
touching me.
Yeah.
And if
It's
you
an immediate violation. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
But if you were to respond, Kiki, you just said your hair wasn't you. You cut your
Hmm.
hair.
Yeah.
I'm not touching you. I'm just touching your hair, or I'm just touching
Yeah.
your head. I'd be like, no, you're touching
That's
me.
me. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
me. So
Hmm.
we have this strange
Yeah.
thing. And then, of course, like you mentioned, sometimes we gain weight, we lose weight.
Yeah.
Um, I usually gain
We go
weight.
through a million changes and yeah.
Do I become a bigger me or a smaller me? Um,
Uh,
if you have a 2-year-old, when I was 2, was there
yeah.
a lesser me than when I was 12? Um,
Yeah.
things like that. So we're connected to this body, we're in it, but it's
Hmm.
also it is me. It's
Yeah.
intimately me. And
Hmm.
and so when you have body dysmorphia,
Yeah.
where you just feel like I'm in the wrong body, you're really experiencing a spiritual, psychological issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like the young woman who is
Mm.
has bulimia and
Yeah.
anorexia, who
Yeah.
looks in the mirror and she thinks she's fat,
Hmm.
and she's actually starving to death.
Yeah.
We don't say to her, "You're right. You're fat." We say, "No, there's a
Yeah.
problem, and we've got to
Yeah.
get your mind and your body back in sync."
Yeah.
And we certainly are seeing that with the transgender thing of,
Yeah.
rather than affirming this
Hmm.
dysmorphia, saying, "No, we need to
Yeah.
work on what's wrong." Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
I like that you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned, a little bit earlier that concept of like there is, there's a disconnect, between the mind and body, both in sort of a mental sense, but you also brought up a little bit about how there is a spiritual connection between, yourself and your body, right? And how, I would, maybe speculate that a stronger philosophical or spiritual understanding of like the relationship between you and your body. It I don't know, maybe it might help with these feelings of dysmorphia, this understanding that I am not, a person that is trapped inside my body, right? I don't exist, my body is not sort of just this shell or this vehicle. My body is, in some senses, me, because, like you were saying, right? Like if someone comes up and touches my hair, or if there's any sort of unwanted or inappropriate contact, instantly, like that is me that is
And a
affected
violation of
by
me,
this.
like,
It is a violation of me. And so, like, if that if that sense of me, that sense of autonomy can be violated, then it also shows that I have a sense of ownership, I have a sense of autonomy over my body that is given, that is my right. Like I buy rights as having a body, as being a person with a body. I have possession, autonomy, and ownership over myself and over my body. And I think that that could be a very empowering thought in a lot of ways, you know, to realize that I am not at war with my body, right? Like my body, uh, you know, I am my body in a certain sense, or I possess my body. I have autonomy over it. And, you know, that is something that I can, you know, I don't necessarily want to say I can control my body because I don't think that we can exercise, you know, exercise that autonomy to, or I don't think that we should exercise that autonomy to a degree that it, you know, distorts the dignity of the body. But
Right.
still, that sense of we do have autonomy
I mean,
over
we have it
ourselves.
in the sense of guardianship. You know, we
Yeah, I think that's a good way. Yeah,
we can't just do as we like with our body. I can't start like
yeah,
killing myself
mhm,
or, you know,
mhm,
just doing horrible things to it. But also my
yeah,
body exists in, again, going back to this I thou, you know, there's an
yeah,
I, but there's also a you. I
yeah,
can't just do whatever I want with my body without it being in relation to someone else. You know,
yeah,
no man is an island kind of thing.
yeah, mhm,
I exist in relation to other people around me.
yeah,
And so I can't, you know, I can't like fling my body at yours and hurt yours. I
yeah,
can't, you know, do anything with my body that's going to hurt someone else's body.
yeah,
So, you know,
yeah,
I own it in the sense of I own my house, but I can't like just
mhm,
decide, oh, I'll burn my house down, you know?
yeah,
Or,
yeah,
you know, again, even my own body comes with rights and duties. So,
mhm,
you know, persons come
mhm,
with rights and duties. The very
yeah,
nature of the
mhm,
person comes with rights and duties, and that includes rights and duties to ourselves. And
yeah,
I have a right and a duty to take care of myself,
mhm,
to not do anything with my body that hurts your body, and vice versa.
mhm,
So again, we don't own this body in a vacuum, so to speak,
yeah,
where it's
mhm,
mine, I'll do as I damn well please kind of thing. It
yeah,
just,
mhm,
because of the nature of the person, including our own person, um, there are boundaries to freedom. I think again, you know, one of the things is human freedom. You know, one of the big
yeah,
chapters is free will and determinism, and
yeah,
freedom requires boundaries. License doesn't.
mhm,
You know, I'll do whatever I
yeah,
want is
mhm,
license, but freedom has to have boundaries in order to
yeah,
be freedom. And that's always kind of a weird thing. You know,
yeah,
many of us drive here on the East Coast on Route 95, and I tell the teenagers, you know,
yep,
would you like to drive on Route 95 with no rules, no laws? Just
yeah,
everybody gets to do whatever they want. Well, you'd all die. You know?
yeah. And I think a lot of people would say, I would like it if I could do whatever I want, but I don't want them to be able to do whatever they want, right? It
Yeah,
would be great if the no rules rule applied to me and me alone, right?
yeah. It was great
As
during
long as it,
COVID when I was the only one on
yeah,
Route 95. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But, you know, the rules and regulations allow us to get it
yeah,
freely from point A to point B.
yeah,
And so, you know, we have freedom in our life to the extent that we obey certain boundaries.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
includes with our body, you know, that our
yeah,
body has
mhm,
boundaries of what we can do with
mhm,
it, what we can do to it. Um,
yeah,
and again, these are all rooted in the nature of the human
yeah.
person.
Yeah, and I think that you went into that distinction in the book, in that you know, that dichotomy, that distinction between, I think, corpore and life. I'm totally mispronouncing it, right? But
Life,
like
super in life,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but that, you know, the distinction of okay, the body can be something that it can be an object of study and sort of more of a removed capacity. So imagine like if I'm going to the doctor or so, right? Like the doctor is studying my body, but he's not studying me in that regard, right? Like if I have a broken leg or something, then yeah, I could say that I have a broken leg, but I am not broken. Like in that sense, the body, the corpor, is, broken or sort of
The
issues.
body, the
Um,
life is really your inner experience of your body. And and
yeah,
and so no one has access to that except for you.
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
why we have pain charts in when you go to see the
yeah,
he can look at your
mhm,
broken arm and he can see that it's broken,
yeah,
but he's got to ask you how
yeah,
much does it hurt? And the
yeah,
only way you can sort of get at that is on a scale, that you
yeah,
can point to. But we have
yeah,
no really way of knowing if pain, what I consider pain of a level 4 is the same thing.
yeah,
We can't get at that inner experience at all of another
yeah.
person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the same concept of the idea of like, how do I know that my blue is the same as your blue, right? Like we can never ultimately know, right, that we're seeing the exact same blue. Yeah, I find it very interesting that that you were able to kind of separate as distinct areas of study both of those concepts, right? That concept of my experience of my body as well as my body as sort of an object of study. Um,
It's one of the things that really shows us the difference between the mind and the brain. I mean, I know I have
yeah, yeah,
I experience my mind as an
yeah,
inner understanding of myself.
yeah,
But I wouldn't even know I had a brain except that science tells me I have a brain. You can't feel
yeah,
your brain, you
yeah,
can't see your brain.
yeah,
Um, and there's and the distinction between the mind and the brain is so huge. And I always feel that one of the
yeah,
easiest ways is to when you're awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and your mind
yeah,
wants to go to sleep and your brain says,
yeah,
no, I'm going to keep you awake with some
yeah,
generating some
yeah,
ridiculous thought over and over and over again of
yeah,
anxiety. That's your brain. That's a
yeah,
good to see the distinction between the two.
yeah. Yeah, and it also reminds me of the oh, there was some, I think he was a metal worker, a railway worker. I remember his last name was Gage, but he had a pipe that blew through his brain. And he was just living with, a giant pipe in his head because it was almost too difficult to remove it. And, he lived basically perfectly fine. He didn't really have, too many issues. And again, if we're thinking that the brain is me, well, the brain can still experience a significant amount of trauma, but I can still be me, right? Like that doesn't impact the me-ness of it. Very interesting.
I mean, we certainly need our brain. It's necessary.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
to some extent, although they're finding now we need less than, for many people, less than you might
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
do.
hmm
But,
yeah,
that, was it Penfield who said it was the idea that, perhaps our brain actually, rather than enhancing our mind,
yeah,
it actually limits it. Uh,
yeah,
Fascinating
yeah,
concept.
yeah. Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to discuss, I guess, one more aspect very quickly, and so that would be um, the body as the body as the way that we can interact with the world and interact with each other. So particularly the thing in the book that kind of highlighted this for me is you have a section on the human face and how, the face is this beautiful form of expression. And it's also, in a certain sense, it's your story as well, right? Like you're able to learn so much about someone from their face. And, I would like to, I guess, talk a little bit about um, how we use our body and, also our face as a way to connect with people, how we use it, like I guess the interpersonal capacity of the body and of the face.
Yeah, the face is so
Yeah,
important. I mean,
yeah,
we talk about the eyes being the windows of the
yeah,
soul, and we
mhm,
really have a strong sense of that.
yeah,
But also the face as, I mean, one of the examples we give is, if somebody
yeah,
comes up and say punches you in the gut, as
yeah,
opposed to somebody comes up and slaps you in the face.
yeah,
And while the gut punch might be a lot more physically painful, the slap
yeah,
in the face is far more emotionally and
yeah.
psychologically.
It's insulting.
It's
Yeah,
it's a whole different
yeah,
thing than the punch
yeah,
in the gut. And we just sort of intuitively know that. Um,
yeah,
we get that's one thing we get it. We understand it. The face
yeah.
is that sort of center of the person. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, while our whole body, we certainly have whole body signs of emotion. It's the
Yeah,
face. There's whole books that have been written about the fact that we cry, that humans,
yeah,
that we cry both when we're happy and when we're sad.
yeah,
That weeping, um, in either direction, it's almost like we can't contain ourselves. Um,
yeah,
we come out of ourselves. It's a fascinating thing. Um,
yeah.
Also, humans, as far as I know, are the only animals that make love face to face, and
Oh,
that kiss.
yeah, I think that's a good connection as well. Yeah,
And that's a
mhm,
fascinating thing that
yeah,
the desire to kiss someone that you love again is the
yeah,
face, and that's a
mhm,
really amazing thing. The desire to
yeah,
touch someone's face that you love.
yeah,
Um,
hmm,
Eventually you move on to other body parts, but you almost always
yeah, but
face. Like, I want to
yeah,
touch your face. Like, I love you.
yeah,
Kissing
hmm,
is an amazing thing that humans
yeah,
do.
hmm,
And so a lot happens with our face.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
just
very
artistically, like
fascinating.
the face is the object of fascination, right? So, I'm thinking back like soldiers that are getting a little portrait of their sweetheart, right? It's her face, right?
Right.
Like even throughout human history, right? Like the object of fascination of the person, and in a certain sense, the uh, physical expression of you-ness is your face, right?
Yeah.
It's
I
so
mean,
beautiful, so
babies,
unique.
you can see when you get a baby,
Yeah,
like you just want to kiss their face,
yeah,
their little
yeah.
face. And
It's
that
bushy, yeah,
interesting,
yeah,
connected, of course, to the Eucharist. But we'll
yeah,
often say to a baby, "Oh, I want to eat you up. I could just eat you up.
yeah, yeah. You're right.
Could eat you up." So this desire to put things that we love in our mouth, it's a very
Yeah,
fascinating thing. We
yeah.
see it with a newborn baby. We see it with food. We see it
Yeah,
with sex.
yeah,
We see, and of course, it's how we speak. We see it, the
yeah,
desire to eat things that we
yeah,
love. And I'm always fascinated by that with the Eucharist because, Jesus said,
yeah,
take my body, take my blood, and eat me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we get to do this eating thing with the
yeah,
Eucharist. Um,
yeah.
again,
And like
it's
the translation was more like gnaw,
great.
right? Like not just like, oh, hold me gently in your mouth. It's like gnaw on me, eat me, right?
Yeah,
Like
eat
that's,
me. And you see it when you
yeah,
hold that new baby. It's like, I just want to eat you up. And it's funny that we say
yeah,
that. Why do
yeah,
we say that? And then, of course, the
yeah,
sense of smell is
yeah,
so connected to memory. Like, oh my
yeah,
goodness, you can smell something 40 years later that you smell when you were a
yeah,
child, mom's cooking, and you're right back there.
yeah,
Sight, hearing, it's
mm,
all, here. So
mm,
much going on with the face, the human face.
yeah, hmm,
How different every human face is, like
yeah,
that. And of course, biblically, we talk about seeing the face of God.
yeah,
We talk about the Sacred Heart and, hands, but we really talk about seeing the face of God. You will see God face to face.
yeah,
Like, you know,
mm,
so we've been given this both
yeah,
religious and philosophical sense of the human face as
yeah.
radically important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not just radically important, but also it is, in a certain sense, it is the physical expression of your identity as well, right? Like going back to what you were mentioning with the face of God, right? I mean, in the Old Testament with Moses, right? When he's asking God, "Can I see you?" And he said, "You wouldn't even be able to handle seeing my face. I will let you look briefly at my back as I walk past you," right? But yeah, this concept of face is you, in a certain sense, or
You know,
it's the physical embodiment, physical expression of you, of your personhood, in a unique sense. Yeah,
medically, we've done hand transplants, heart
yeah,
transplants, all
yeah,
kinds. But when it came to face transplants, there was a huge
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, like that's
yeah,
just not right.
yeah,
We've since
yeah,
realized that the underlying structure of your face
yeah,
contributes to it. But
yeah,
so we have done face transplants as far as I know.
yeah,
But you don't
yeah. In the
necessarily
case of
wind up
serious burn
looking like
victims.
the other person. But there is
Yeah,
but there was again this philosophical sense of like, oh, that's just not right,
yeah,
we wanna,
hmm,
we get, how do we get around that sense that we have
yeah,
of that's way too personal, you know?
yeah, hmm,
Going back
wonderful.
just quickly with this transplant idea,
Yeah,
and there hasn't been research done on it, but there are stories, of
yeah,
people that get a heart transplant. In the sense of
hmm,
I am my body, I'm not my body.
hmm,
But people, let's say, that have no musical abilities at all, and then they get a
yeah,
heart transplant or some other transplant, and they
yeah,
begin to have musical abilities, let's say, and they
hmm.
find out that the person that the
Was a
heart came from
musician.
was a musician. So we're
Yeah,
starting to see like anecdotal
yeah,
stuff coming out, and I'm
yeah,
just dying to learn more about that,
yeah,
because to me that points to I am my body. And of
yeah,
course, as Catholics, we certainly, as Christians, we believe in the
yeah,
resurrection of the body, that the
yeah,
body is
hmm,
so, so important. Um,
yeah,
and connected to this, I just want to mention, because I was just talking to somebody about it
yeah,
this morning, and that's John Paul II's statement about pornography, where he
yeah.
said, the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much of the human person, but it shows too
It's too
little
little.
of the human person,
Hmm.
because we're not
Yeah,
just our bodies, you know,
yeah,
this whole person connected to the body. So when you separate
yeah,
just the body out in pornography, it just becomes this
yeah,
warped view of the
yeah,
amazing beauty of the human person.
yeah,
And that's only one
yeah.
of the reasons it's wrong, but it's a major,
Yeah, of course.
it's a
But you're
major,
right. I mean,
'cause when I say that to people, they're like, what do you mean it shows too little? It shows too much.
yeah,
No,
it doesn't show your
it
soul. It
doesn't
doesn't
show
show your
you.
personality. It doesn't show you in
Yeah.
your personhood. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like throughout this conversation, I'm realizing um, how little we understand, the body, and how little we understand the relationship between like our body and ourselves, right? Um, and also how it is um, an amazing object of wonder. How there's so much more that we can still learn and explore and grow in.
And how little we know about our bodies. I mean, there's microbes, and there's miles and miles of blood vessels and nerves, and, things that we
Yeah,
have no idea about. And yet we feel ourselves as our
yeah,
body, in our body.
yeah,
Like I said, you're not in your big toe until you stub it,
yeah,
and you're there. You know?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and,
Yeah, really amazing. A
there
great
should
area
be
for,
wonder, wonder,
yeah,
philosophy begins in wonder, but
yeah,
it also ends in wonder. It's very
yeah,
interesting, because
mhm,
we can never comprehend all of it, because we're made in the image and likeness of God, and God can
yeah,
never be comprehended. Even
yeah.
when we're in
That is such
heaven,
a
we'll
beautiful
see
thing.
God face to face, but we cannot, as
Yeah,
created beings, comprehend him. We will
yeah,
never comprehend him. We will understand bits and
yeah,
pieces,
Yeah.
And the same with ourselves, that we are a mystery. We're made in the image and
Yeah.
likeness of an infinite mystery. Um,
Yeah.
and so philosophy begins in wonder, it also ends in wonder. We will always,
Yeah.
if we're open, if our hearts and minds are open, we will
Yeah.
always in heaven, in eternity, have the immediate experience of wonder.
Mhm.
Yeah, it won't go away. Well, it'll get filled,
Yeah.
but it will never get filled.
Yeah. Great. Well, I mean, that seems like an excellent stopping point.
Well, I
But
just want
thank
to
you
say
so much
that
for,
all of this, it really, from Dietrich von Hildebrand to Baldwin
yeah.
Schwartz to Stephen Schwartz, I was very, very blessed to meet him in 1980, to be his student, to be his coworker, to be his editor, to be his co-writer. But most of all, I just want to say, because I know he'll probably get a chance to listen to this, to be his friend.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
just one of the greatest stories of my life. And
oh,
his lovely wife, Sherry. I've been very blessed. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Well, thank you.
the book was a great joy to put together with him. He would very graciously put me as co-author there, but he did the 99% and I just cracked the whip of the 1% and got him to write it. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, it was a great joy to read as well. I mean, it is so amazing and it's so accessible as well. It is human. It's very human, right? That concept of wonder, and it's almost as if you are exploring through these questions and these ideas with, someone else who is a great mind, but who also has this childlike view of how amazing everything is.
Mm.
It's like you're just sitting and having a conversation next to someone. It's beautiful.
Well, Steve, he's a beautiful person. Like I said, we've
Oh,
had a beautiful friendship. His classroom was like the book. He taught thousands and thousands of students over the years, and they loved him.
mhm.
He's delightful and charming, and just a really, really good person. And yeah, just a great blessing. So,
Thank you. Well, please, well, first off, thank you so much for being able to, or being willing to share your time and your thoughts. Please also extend my eternal gratitudes to Stephen and his wife as well for, all of their inputs. This is a wonderful, wonderful work, and thank you guys so much for sharing your minds and your insights with the world. So,
thank
yeah,
you.
and thank
Yeah,
you for sharing your time with me.
thank you so much. This has been delightful.
Yeah, it's really been wonderful. Thank you so much.